Over the past few months, the Engineering Club has been working on its biggest and most ambitious project yet. My name is Connor Solorzano. I've been your club president for the semester of fall 2025, and today I want to show you our 3D printed 6-axis autonomous robot arm. Let's get into it. The robot arm project started back in spring of 2025, right after we just finished up our line following robot.
I need to finish like really not that good.
We held a vote on what project to do next semester, and out of all the different ideas, one gained unanimous votes, and that was to build the robot kit designed by Arctos Robotics. Now, this wasn't exactly your standard robotic kit, because the actual parts that came in the kit were some motors, some electronic parts, and some nuts and bolts. The actual structural pieces that you need to actually build the arm were all 3D model files that needed to be 3D printed. So, over the next few weeks, I printed up all of those different parts on my Prusa Minis in my garage. Now, some of the parts were too big for my Minis to handle, so shout out to Alexander Kyrgyz and Alexander Cunningham for helping out and 3D printing the parts that my Minis couldn't handle. The assembly process kicked off in late September. Each week, the whole club would gather together for an organized assembly day. On an assembly day, the club would be split up into different groups, and each group assigned a section of the instructions to work on.
It could also be that too, because I've had some really.
Pin 6, which is the digital right pin that I'm writing to with the script.
But
It's the bend song.
Going in?
Not on all of that.
Overall, this turned out to be a very efficient way of getting things done. The first few modules were already complete by the time our first assembly day was over. There were, however, a couple of issues that would plague us for the rest of the assembly process. The first issue was that the instructions did not have a particularly high level of detail. The instructions would show what parts to put together, but not always how to fit them together. The other issue that would come up sometimes was that we would have parts that would break or parts that would just almost fit together but just couldn't quite. And that was because my 3D printers aren't really the best, and sometimes they would put out parts that weren't really the best quality. If you were to ask any of the club members what the hardest part of the robot arm project was, they would probably bring up the Y-axis gearbox. The Y-axis gearbox was really hard because it used cycloidal discs. Cycloidal discs are basically like regular gears, but better, but way more difficult to assemble. We put the entire cycloidal disc assembly together, realized we had done it completely wrong, and then had to disassemble the entire thing.
We have an immovable object.
Yes!
Well, no, pliers are gonna break this. Like, you're gonna rip off the threading off that screw. Yeah. Since white is on the outside, the
We then put everything completely back together, realized we had done it wrong again, and had to take everything back apart again a second time. And luckily, after a lot more blood, sweat, and tears, it finally worked. At this point, if there are any further issues with the Y-axis gearbox, that's up to Team 2026 to figure it out. After the first few assembly days, all of the separate modules were complete. From that point on, it was time to start attaching the modules together. The club was split up into 3 different groups for this. One group to work on attaching pieces from the lower half of the arm, one for the upper half, and one to work on wiring and programming. After a few more assembly days, it was time for that glorious moment when the completed lower half of the robot arm could be attached to the completed upper half. It was at this moment that we all really started to see the robot arm coming together. Even if the arm itself didn't work, we were just happy to have gotten to this point. Which is a good thing, because spoiler alert, it didn't really work. The motors of the robot arm give us a lot of trouble. We started working on them in early November, and from the very start, all of the motors just refused to budge. We tried everything, and it turns out that the wiring diagram was a little bit confusing, and we were running high voltage wires into all the wrong spots. This caused short circuits to happen, fuses to blow, and all sorts of little issues that we just couldn't figure out. We ended up having to ask the creator of the robot arm himself, who thankfully was actually very willing to help us walk through all of the different troubleshooting processes. Finally, in around early December, a whole month later, we actually got the robot arm to move a little. We tested all the motors, and finally they were all working, but by the time we got everything moving, it was the end of the semester, and it was time to wind down for finals. All in all, the project was a lot of fun, and we all learned quite a bit from the whole process. But don't just take it from me. Here's what the other club members had to say about it. Would you say overall you liked working on the robot arm?
I would say yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I gotta say, yeah.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Yes.
I think the robot arm was interesting because at first it was like so not rewarding because every single thing we ever did was just a failure.
There were some times where there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into making that robot arm.
It was very tedious and very hard.
Like if you would have asked me in the beginning, I would have said no.
But in the end, it sort of felt like we conquered a boss fight.
But now, I think now that we can actually see the arm, it's one of the coolest things.
It just felt really good, like, you know, working on a problem, like you're working for hours and we finally get some sort of movement or something to work.
What was your favorite part about the engineering club?
Oh, honestly, kind of just like building stuff together with people.
I would say my favorite part was being able to work together on something.
I think the community and just everybody in the club, it was so fun having like the basically best friends and getting to do projects together.
I had a lot of fun making friends with people here.
I feel like everybody's just happy to be there, and everybody's just supportive of each other, and also the projects. A lot of other clubs, they just don't do anything, but this club, we actually built like a 3-foot-tall robot arm.
Would you say that this club has helped inspire you to work on your own projects in the future?
Actually, yeah, it's gotten me back into coding for things that aren't explicitly like for a grade.
Yes, it did. Now that I have like some more knowledge on Arduino, I plan to buy my own and hopefully work on smaller projects.
Yeah, it's actually inspired me a lot. I'm working on a 3D model of a little robotic toy right now because I got to see what we could do with the electrical systems.
Yeah, it made it seem very approachable and something I could do either with a small group of people like that or by myself. You know. Definitely, I would. I'm asked for a Harbor Freight gift card this Christmas, so I'm just going to buy a bunch of power tools. I have 300 pounds of redwood that I acquired this semester in my backyard, so I'm going to be doing stuff with that.
You know, it's interesting because when I first went into engineering club, I was kind of lost, and it's interesting because I thought, well, you know, I'm not really sure if I even want to do engineering, but I think it definitely helped me understand at least what people are like and what projects are like, what you can work on, what things are even involved in the projects. I think that's so cool and so educational because if you don't go through that experience, or you know, you don't really ever get to build your own project, you kind of go through engineering thinking like, you know, what am I doing this major for? You know, you're taking classes, you're like, why am I even learning this? But now sometimes I take classes, I'm like, dude, it would have been nice to know this before. So I think, yeah, absolutely, it's one of the best choices that I made to join engineering.
The engineering club will be continuing operations next semester, but by the time you see this video, I will no longer be the club president. I'm transferring to Sac State for my upper division classes and leaving the club to the next generation of leaders. The robot arm is fully working and the possibilities are endless. Feel free to use it however you see fit. Thank you to everyone who helped to work on this project, and I hope that your hard work helps to earn you some points with your future employer. I'm the type of person who always has to have some kind of project going on, or else I start to get bored. If you're anything like me and want to chat about engineering projects, or just get in contact with me in general, here's my email address right here. I hope you have a fantastic day, and until next time, goodbye.
Oh!